We appreciate the time as always, Scott. And how concerned should fans be about the Philadelphia Phillies' rough series against the Brewers?
So it was not a good homestand. Obviously, they cap it with the sweep by the Brewers. And so, I know you start the week probably with a sour taste in your mouth. But look, I think, I hate to use the cliche, right, about ebbs and flows of a long season and all of that. Look, I wouldn't read that much into it. I just as we were talking about the 9-1 stretch that preceded it against some really bad teams, and you said, well, you can't read too much into that. They didn't have Bryce Harper for 5 of the 6 games on the homestand, which kind of throws the offense out of whack. They did not play well defensively the last 2 days. That's something that they're going to have to look at. That's something that they're going to have to tighten up. But, I think on the whole, they ran into a very hot Brewers team, a team that's now won 7 in a row. And my big takeaway was, honestly, just that the National League is really tough. I mean, we knew it was tough, and I think, you look at a team like the Brewers, which a week ago, things were not looking great there, and that's a team that's capable of putting wins together. There are a lot of teams like that in the National League, and I think if you're the Phillies, you look at that and you go, well, the time will come here now to kind of try to separate yourself from the pack a little bit and make sure that you're not sweating out a 6 or 7 team wild card race down the stretch.
All right, I just want to get into some problem things that I'm seeing. Right now, when I say the bullpen needs help, what would you say?
Absolutely. 100%, and look, I mean, we've talked about it all year, feeling like they were a reliever short at the back of the bullpen, and now they're 2 relievers short. And so I think what you're going to see now, starting now, is a little bit of an internal review, right? They're going to look at it and go, well, can Taiwan Walker be a guy who's going to fill that role, right? I mean, they're going to move him into the bullpen, and it's not as a long man. They want him in leverage. They want him in short bursts. They want to see if that's something he can do. He's never done it in his career, so they're going to find out, right? Can Seth Johnson help out? They called him up. He's going to get an opportunity here, a converted starter in AAA. Can he be a solution in the bullpen? And they'll go through their internal solutions between now and, let's say, the middle of July, when the trade season kind of heats up, and they'll know, do we need to go out and get 1 reliever? Do we need to go out and get 2 relievers? As I said the other day, I'd be shocked if they don't get at least 1, and it's going to be a lot easier if all they have to do is get 1. So they're going to go through and they're going to figure out what they've got, and at the same time, they need some of these guys to really pitch well because someone's got to step up out there. They're definitely in flux out there in the bullpen.
The bullpen has been an issue. Defense popped onto the scene, though, yesterday with Trey Turner and Weston Wilson's defensive miscues in the series finale. Just in general, Scott, do you look at this team as a underachieving defensive club, or was yesterday just a bad example at a bad time?
Look, I don't think that they're ever going to be like a great defensive team as constituted. That said, they should be good enough. They were not good enough yesterday. They should be good enough they should make the plays that they should make. It shouldn't cost them games. But, it did cost them yesterday, and it cost them in a few ways. I mean, look, Rob Thompson said it after the game. He kind of questioned his own decision to leave Weston Wilson in the game. Now, it's one thing to have a platoon in left field and to say, okay, Kepler's going to play against righties and Wilson's going to play against lefties. But it was sort of like, well, that was a case where not only did the Brewers bring in a righty reliever, and he sticks with Wilson, but also Wilson's the lesser of the 2 defenders. So not only should Kepler be in that game to hit against the righty, but also Kepler should be in that game because it's a 1-run game and it's getting late. So that was a case where Rob Thompson said, "Look, put that one on me. I've got to rethink that decision and why I did that and why I didn't go the other way." It's not to say Weston Wilson shouldn't catch that ball. He should, but he's not a natural outfielder. He's playing left field because that's the platoon that they've decided to go with. And then Turner, the ball's hit right at him, right? Obviously, he's got to make that play, and they've got to and get them out of that inning. So 2 bad miscues and a questionable decision managerial-wise, and it cost them a game yesterday. I don't think that that's been the way they've played all year. I think they've played much better than that defensively. So they've got to definitely tighten it up for sure.
We've heard the changes in the rotation. Obviously, Zach Wheeler's wife is having a baby, so congratulations to them. But the one thing that's confusing me a little bit, the whole Aaron Nolas situation and this ankle thing. I don't understand what's taking so long.
Yeah, I mean, look, I talked with him the other day, and he said, it was coming along much more slowly than he expected. He thought, maybe he'd miss a couple of starts and that would be it. Well, this week will be the third start, I guess, that he'll miss. And look, I think he's going to try to face hitters, in some live BP in Toronto and then go out on a rehab. I think that's the plan. One start and then back in the rotation. So, you're probably looking at another week or so. It's definitely taken longer than they expected. I don't think that this is like a case where they're slow playing it necessarily because, Aaron Nola didn't pitch well in his last start. I don't think that's the case. I honestly think that, this was the kind of thing that just lingered longer than they thought. And maybe it was a more severe injury than they thought at the time as well. So he's not a guy who misses time. He's not a guy who spends much time on the IL. And like I said, I don't think this is like, hey, let's just stretch this out and get him a reset. I think they want to get him back in there in the rotation. It's just taken a while.
We're talking to Scott Lauber, who covers the Phillies for the Philadelphia Inquirer. While we're on the topic of starting rotation, kind of a weird situation Saturday. In the blowout game, Jesus Lazardo got kind of hung out to dry. Rob Thompson ejected before they can kind of, it seemed, figure out what they were going to do if Lazardo continued to give up runs. What exactly happened with that situation that led to him staying in that game? Is that on Calitri? Is that on Thompson? What was that?
Yeah, it was a weird one, and I wish I could tell you. So I wasn't at the game on Saturday, and then yesterday with all the things going on pregame between the Walker to the bullpen and all of that, stuff, the roster move, Harper, whether he was going to play on Tuesday or not. I didn't get around to asking anyone. It did certainly seem like they left Lazardo in there too long, right? I mean, you got to get him out of the game before it gets to that point. You feel bad, for him because he's pitched so well. We were talking, if we were having this conversation a week ago, we'd be talking about should Jesus Lazardo start the All-Star game, and his ERA jumps like a run and a half because of that one start. And now you're like, well, if you just looked at the numbers and you didn't see all his starts, you'd think he was just having an okay first half and not a great one minus the one really bad start. So, yeah, it's too bad. I definitely think that they definitely didn't get him out of there as soon as they should have. And I don't know, I wish I did. I don't know whether that had to do with Thompson getting ejected at the time he did and they didn't have somebody warming and got someone up too late. But whatever the case, they definitely left him in there. It felt like they left him out to dry a little bit in there and out there, and he should have been out of that ball game.
All right, one last question. I got to ask you about this Taiwan Walker thing. Going back to the bullpen, I don't think that's the surprise. I think the surprise is it's almost like the Phillies want to see if he can get the job done as almost like a setup guy. Is that what your thoughts are? It is.
And I think that there's probably a few ways to look at it. I mean, the fact that Taiwan Walker, a starter for his entire career, and this is not a guy who's been around, a few years. This guy's been in the big leagues for 10 plus years, right? And the fact that they are, going to conduct this experiment to see whether he can be a high leverage, late inning setup guy, I think is number one, an indictment of the depth in the bullpen, right? I mean, the fact that, we said from the start, like it felt like when they added 1 + 1 and equaled 1, right? When they lost Hoffman and Esteves and equaled Romano and nobody else, it felt like they were leaving themselves short. And now subtract Alvarado and they're too short. So, like I said, they're going to go and get somebody before the deadline, but the deadline is 2 months away. So I think the first thing you have to do is figure out, look, do any of our in-house options help solve the problem? Help at least, prevent us from having to go out and get 2 guys. So they're going to find out. But, the fact that they're taking Taiwan Walker, a starter his whole career, and trying to turn him into a setup guy without setup guy stuff, like he's never really had super swing and miss stuff. He's never been a high strikeout rate guy. Teams like swing and miss late in the game, and that hasn't been him. So, he did have the appearance in Tampa, which everyone was very impressed with, where he struck out 7 guys and in 3 innings or whatever that was, and everyone was like, "Oh wow," Well, you need to keep seeing it, right? So now they'll put him out there and they'll see what he can do. He's also going to have to learn how to do things like pitch back to back, right? He's never done that in his career, and he's not going to do it right away. Rob Thompson said they'll work up to that where he can go out and pitch back to back days. So it's going to be a process, and maybe at the end of it all, doesn't work out, and he ends up being more of a long man, more of an innings eater long man in the bullpen, and they have to figure out how to piece together 7, 8, and 9 in another way. So maybe he's part of the solution, maybe he's not, but they'll figure it out now over the next few weeks.
Well, Scott, it's never boring with this team, and they certainly had an interesting weekend with some moves. We appreciate you helping us make sense of it all, and we'll be talking to you down the road.
All right, guys. Thanks. Anytime.
There he is, Scott Lauber.
Hey, I want to thank you guys for watching, listening in. I want you to like, subscribe, do what you have to do to kind of stay on focus with us. Also, we also have plenty of other content that goes on here on YouTube. So go to that, like that, subscribe to that. And also you can catch us on the afternoon show, 2 to 6, Monday through Friday, 97.5 The Fanatic, 97.5thefanatic.com, and NBC Sports Philadelphia.